In these last 2 minutes, you've been treated to a tiny sampling of the grandeur, beauty, and wonder of the planet on which we live, and the universe which envelops us. I'm glad you could join us again for part 2 in the Awakening series. But in case this is your initial introduction, I'd really encourage you to first pull up the Awakening Part 1 video and watch it. We all have had experiences like standing on a mountaintop and being amazed at the view, or admiring the beauty of a spectacular sunset, or perhaps just sitting quietly on an abandoned beach, drinking in the sights and sounds of the restless ocean in front of us. Should those types of profound experiences draw us to reflect more deeply about what lies behind the beauty we see, we'll want to explore the challenge of thinking thoroughly about the things that lie beyond our surface day-to-day encounters. By that I mean the things we experience through our 5 senses alone. But there is a cautionary note in that, I should think. For example, in our previous Awakening video, we alluded to having skepticism about some issues we see and hear. That would certainly have to include, I would think, claims made by scientists, scholars, and even theologians. We'll also be addressing an aspect of skepticism, healthy and otherwise, up ahead, so stay with us.
Who among us hasn't gazed in awe at the sheer immensity of the starry panorama in the night sky on a clear summer's night? These kinds of thoughts often send us over into a realm of what philosophers and thinkers down the centuries have referred to as things metaphysical. We talked briefly about this in video 1, but as a quick refresher, metaphysical is a scholarly sounding word which basically just means things that are unmeasurable by the 5 senses. There are probably many reasons why the search for the metaphysical, beyond things we can perceive, has always played a large part in human thinking down the ages. So, as we proceed, we'll assume that you may have, at some point in your life, asked yourself some version of 3 profoundly important questions. First, we might ask ourselves, how did I get here? Then, why am I here? And lastly, of course, the most vital, where am I going? We'll also be addressing aspects of these crucial life issues. Oh, but first, we need to consider the topic of atheism as a mode of belief. What about a worldview that proclaims bluntly, there is no God? Well, the person making that bold pronouncement would certainly be called an atheist. Ultimately, we must ask ourselves, is it reasonable or logical to deny the existence of an eternal deity who may possibly exist just outside our personal realm of perception? What if, in fact, this all-powerful being exists in a dimension that is totally inaccessible to mortal humans? It would, in other words, take a lot of faith to then believe such a being absolutely did not exist. It might even be fair to wonder about what really motivates someone who would boldly cling to such an illogical position. Certainly, Mr. Spock would have found the atheist position most illogical, especially in the face of scientific discoveries over recent years. Yet many otherwise intelligent people persist in calling themselves atheists. Dr. John Lennox, Oxford professor, has made a rather curt 4-word statement in one of his books, referencing many recent astounding scientific breakthroughs. He says simply, "Science has buried atheism." His thesis in a nutshell is that specified complexity, or intelligent-based design in the cosmos, and in all life on Earth, has been clearly revealed by a number of newer discoveries. Lennox goes on to say bluntly, atheism is a delusion since it is a persistent belief in the face of strong contrary evidence. So maybe it's proper that we should be logically skeptical of any rigid claims made by the skeptic atheist.
But it may well be that some of you watching do feel comfortable wearing the mantle of agnosticism instead. But this needs a bit of clarification, since that description may trigger different meanings, not to mention emotion, in different people. So, in order to move forward, maybe we can accept the definition of agnostic as it has most widely come to be understood. We would therefore describe an agnostic as a person who concedes the possibility that there exists one eternal, all-powerful being, but who also claims that no one can know with any real certainty that any such being actually exists. Would you currently claim the agnostic label for yourself? Well, if so, and for the purposes of this series, we must first then determine how you might refine the label a bit for yourself. You could, for example, be placing yourself in either the camp of open or perhaps closed agnosticism. How about this for a statement we might expect from each type? The closed agnostic might assert,
I don't know if there's a God or not. I'm not sure anyone can know that for sure. But anyway, I don't much care either way. I don't let that issue affect the way I live my life one way or the other.
The open agnostic, on the other hand, might say,
I don't know whether or not one all-powerful supreme being, or God, exists. However, if you have the evidence to show me, I'd say that I'm willing to review and consider it.
well, if you define yourself as either closed agnostic or an atheist, and have made a permanent commitment to a hardened humanistic philosophy of life, you should probably save yourself some time and simply click off here. And for those who remain with us and still open, you might have to wrestle a bit with some of what you're about to watch. But keep an open mind and perhaps even challenge any preconceptions that might steer your life currently. There just might be, for an honest seeker of truth, something new to discover that could truly make it time well spent. For the next few minutes, we'll take a brief flyover look at what modern science now knows about the complexities of the universe and of life on this planet. Unfortunately for those in high schools and most universities, the older school textbooks have not yet caught up with much of this counter-Darwinian evolutionary new data. So here's another what if question to stimulate a little thought. What if mounting scientific evidence ends up soon destroying the idea that a mindless concept like chance, elevated to a near godlike power, could ever somehow create everything from nothing? Well, our time is too short in this Awakening series to go into any real depth on this topic. However, for those interested in pursuing the theory of intelligent design, or simply the ID movement, as many in the scientific community are referring to it, you'll find a tremendous number of books, scientific papers, and articles detailing the latest evidence that strongly support the theory that a supreme intelligence of some kind was at work in the design of the universe and of life itself. The ID movement straddles both the disciplines of astrophysics and biology, especially microbiology.
There's a very thought-provoking statement made by astrophysicist Dr. Robert Jastrow. In his book, God and the Astronomers, Dr. Jastrow summed up some of his key data and interpretations by having a bit of fun at his skeptic colleagues' expense. He said this, "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries." Well, in addition to Dr. Jastrow's book, we'll list here just a few of the many additional resources available to you on this topic. Stop the video for a moment if you would like to copy them down. Johannes Kepler in the 1600s discovered the laws of planetary motion. He wrote this, "The chief aim of all investigations of the external world should be to discover the rational order which has been imposed on it by God and which He revealed to us in the language of mathematics. Of course, many scientists would disagree with him. They would put their faith in chance and naturalistic explanations for the origins of the universe and of all life. So, who's right? Of course, that's ultimately up to you to decide for yourself. But for our purposes here, we'll explore just two of the numerous proofs to be found online and in a variety of published volumes on the intelligent design side of the current scientific debate over origins. We'll cover the second proof in the next video. Let's look now, though, at the first powerful argument concerning the staggering amount of pre-programmed information contained within even the simplest microscopic strand of living DNA. Complex intelligent information does not randomly quote-unquote evolve or simply form itself from mindless organic molecules. No, complex programmed information requires a programmer. Only makes common sense, doesn't it? In fact, to believe an enormous database of coded information in DNA came about randomly and mindlessly would be the equivalent, as one ID scientist has said, of believing that given a long enough time span, that enough tornadoes spinning through enough vast electronic junkyards would inevitably and mindlessly form, program, and then launch an enormously complex machine like the space shuttle. Well, that is simply absurd, of course. Discoveries about much of the true makeup of all DNA has staggered scientists in the field of microbiology in recent years. In a current article posted on discovery.org by Stephen C. Meyer on the topic of genetic design, he noted that DNA has a remarkably similar structure to that found in codes, alphabets, and languages of all kinds. But as mind-boggling as DNA complexity is for the traditional evolutionary biologist, it's much worse for the hard-boiled scientist at the cellular level. For even the most primitive, tiny amoeba is now understood to be a living machine composed of precisely designed permeable and semi-permeable membrane structures that take in nutrients, metabolize them, and then expel wastes, systems of circulation and respiration, reproduction, etc., etc. All of these precisely designed and efficiently intermeshing structures and systems are built by DNA coded with more information contained in them than in a vast library of books.
Well, we're getting ready to close out our second video in the Awakening series. You may remember that at the very beginning of our first video, we flashed two quotes. One was an atheist's perspective on the eternal, no creator aspect of the universe. The second was a quote from the Bible's book of Psalms celebrating the wonder of God's creation of the cosmos. We then asked the question, who's right? We'll be suggesting answers to that profound question in the remainder of our series. In video 3 coming up, we'll first address the second quote, proof intelligent design proponents put forward to support their theories. Our hope is that this leads you to possibly ask yourself another what-if question. That would be, what if the newest scientific data really does suggest strongly that an intelligence far beyond that of mortal man, and very likely eternal, might just lie at the heart of all the universe's existence? What might the implications of this be for my life and the choices I make while I'm here on this planet? We'll then be transitioning into a discussion on our differing worldviews and what faith is after all. We'll also be taking some riveting looks at final recorded statements of a few people who are facing their last moments of life. I hope you'll join us again for a very compelling deeper look into origins, finding meaning in living, and in discovering the likelihood of life beyond the grave. For a moment though, take a look at a few points which will appear on your screen. These could be areas that will cause you to stop and think. They may even take you outside your comfort zone that you've been resting in. I hope you will stay with us as we explore this and more in upcoming videos in the Awakening series. As we close, experience exhilaration as you watch this captivating, three-dimensional trip through the universe, courtesy of the Hubble Space Telescope and the creative people at space.com. And thanks for staying with us as we continue our journey.